So much to process with you all, so stick with me as we unpack the latest headline news. Israeli hostage Idan Alexander is now free, thank God. Yes, it's only one, but it's another life saved from the Gaza hell. People doubted that we would be able to free any of our hostages from our Islamonazi barbarian enemies who took them into Gaza in the tunnels. Yet we have successfully freed so many, while there are still 58 remaining. And for those who have been freed, we must be grateful. Thanks to our holy IDF soldiers and to the political pressure on Hamas, Qatar, and Egypt from the Trump administration, pressure that was totally absent from the Biden administration. And all this as we are still fighting this war in Gaza and on 7 fronts to destroy our Islamonazi enemy and prevent any other October 7th massacres from ever happening again on any of our borders. At the same time, over the past few days, we've seen a string of confusing and concerning signals from President Trump and his administration when it comes to Israel. What started with increasingly supportive rhetoric giving Israel the green light to act American and totally destroy Hamas in Gaza, to what then turned to troubling messages and decisions having to do with a deal with the Houthis, a Qatari plane gift to the president, and Trump's visit to Qatar, all while the woke right in America is growing, turning more hostile to Israel, trying to stop a potential attack on Iran if necessary, and trying to put daylight between President Trump and Netanyahu and Israel. So there is a very real concern being discussed that there's a shift in the voices of influence around President Trump. It's subtle, but unmistakable. And now the most jarring move yet. It has been reported that Idan Alexander, just freed from Gaza, will be flying to Qatar to meet President Trump. I really hope that this is not true and does not happen. And as I record this, it is now being reported that Idan Alexander will not be flying to Qatar. So will it happen? Won't it happen? I don't know. But just the idea of him flying to Qatar to meet President Trump is a huge pill to swallow, causing a lot of anger and confusion. Qatar, the terror state that funds Hamas, the regime that directly enabled and paid for the massacre of October 7th, when Idan was kidnapped together with the other 250 plus hostages, when women were brutally raped and murdered, where Jews were burned alive in their homes and outside. Qatar is the terror state base of operations for the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas leadership, and the primary bankroller of radical Islamic terror organizations across the globe, funding Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, and the genocidal jihad against the Jewish state and the whole freedom-loving world. And yet, President Trump, a man who once stood proudly against radical Islam, against jihadist Islam, is meeting Idan in the palace of our enemies, or planning to, not meeting in Jerusalem, not in the White House, not even in Florida. For many of us who have praised Trump's bold pro-Israel record, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, the Abraham Accords, this feels like betrayal, or at the very least, confusion, deep, deep confusion. Let's not forget, Qatar is also waging war on the whole freedom-loving world, not just on Israel. The Holy Land Foundation trial in New York City back in the early 1990s laid bare, in court, the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to destroy America from within. Qatar is the leading sponsor and supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar funds the whole woke mob on U.S. college campuses. They are buying professors, think tanks, and media outlets. They have Al Jazeera. They are turning the youth in America into radical revolutionaries. They've bought politicians on both sides of the aisle across America and in D.C., as well as buying politicians in Europe. And they have so much more power through their money. And now Qatar is gaining legitimacy from U.S. President Trump, who once called them out. This isn't just confusing. This is outright dangerous. Trump knows Qatar's role. He called it out in 2017 in his now famous speech in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, urging Muslim nations to stop the bloodshed and cut off the terror networks. His speech showed that clearly. It showed vision, it showed leadership, and obviously Qatar was part of that needed to be changed, and they didn't. But this trip, flying a Jewish hostage to the den of the very evil people who enabled the hostage's suffering, that's a photo op that sends all the wrong messages. And it's not just about optics. It fuels the growing perception, especially in Israel and in our enemies, that Trump is now flirting with the side of evil that he once called out against, empowering our enemies, that he's listening to the wrong advisors, that he's no longer committed to the values that made him a hero to Israelis and U.S. patriots who know the dangers of Qatar and the whole Sunni Shia jihadi movement it supports out to destroy America, Israel, and the whole freedom-loving world. Now, after all that, I want everyone to take a deep breath and to take a step back. With all of this anger and confusion, I now want people to think about this. Hopefully, this is all part of a deeper strategy of Trump's to expose Qatar, to corner them, and to force the truth into the open about them. This is classic Trump art of the deal. That Trump is using the same strategy he has used before, empowering and building up the other side just enough to snare them in, only to later expose them and take them down or force them and turn them around for the deal, for the better deal. It's a tactic he employed with the American deep state, giving them just enough leash before pulling back the curtain on their corruption, leading so many Americans today to finally understand the power and danger of the deep state within America. Could it be that he's now doing the same thing with Qatar? That this is part of a larger plan to draw them in with honey, gain leverage with all of his deals and openness to working with them, and then work towards cutting off their terror funding pipelines once and for all? Maybe. If it is, I still say that it is a dangerous gamble because it is impossible to bribe and change a 1,400-year-old genocidal jihadist ideology. So this strategy feels either incredibly naive or disturbingly miscalculated and might work, but very short-lived. Because Trump is only in office for how many years? And they're going to continue with their genocidal jihad for forever. And even if that's the case, this latest move of flying Idan Alexander to meet him in Qatar is still despicable. It sends a horrible message to Israelis, to Jews, and to anyone who understands the moral clarity required in today's war between good and evil. It's not just on the battleground. It's a war between good and evil in awareness. But I want to step even further back and zoom out even more for a second with an even larger lens of Trump vis-a-vis Israel and winning our Gaza war and on all 7 fronts. And I have spoken about this before. Most people are totally ignorant of the big picture of Trump's interest in Israel winning this war. The big picture is of Trump's plan that has always been centered on confronting China, economically, militarily, and geopolitically. China is America's #1 threat, according to Trump, in order for American dominance and the key to reviving the U.S. economy. A critical component of Trump's plan is creating a reliable alternative trade corridor from East Asia to the West, to America, bypassing China's maritime control and the now unreliable Suez Canal, which is under Egypt's grip, unreliable, with the rest of the route threatened by Iranian-backed Houthis. That's where Israel comes in. Trump's ultimate goal is to build a land-based economic corridor from Gaza, once cleared of Hamas, through Israel, Jordan, into Saudi Arabia, creating a secure American-aligned trade route for global trade, and then the shipping route from Saudi Arabia to the east. That's why, no matter how bad things look right now, Trump is not dumping Israel. Far from it. Right now, Israel has not yet eliminated Hamas in Gaza because of ongoing hostage concerns, trying to free as many as we can, and a deep state in Israel always trying to stop us from winning this war. thereby forcing Trump to pivot to a temporary plan B, including a deal with the Houthis, because Trump wants an alternative safe trade route for U.S. economic reasons ASAP. And he doesn't want to wait for Israel to win this war in Gaza and get rid of the Islamonazi terror still there. But Trump knows that Egypt, Iran, and the Houthis are unreliable actors. His eyes are still on the long game. And Israel, with a terror-free Gaza, is a cornerstone of that long-term Trump plan. Now, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on in the news. Lots of misinformation by interested parties looking to weaken the Trump-Netanyahu U.S.-Israel alliance. And I'll talk about that in my next video. Deep state forces in Israel and woke right-wing forces in America are still working overtime to destroy the joint work and alliance of Netanyahu and Trump, U.S. and Israel. And yes, Trump empowers enemies as part of his art of the deal. And I'm still deeply bothered by what is happening with the Trump administration and Qatar. And these are real, legitimate concerns. And they must be raised about whatever connections some of the Trump administration officials have with Qatar and Qatari interests. But we should all remember, we don't yet see the full game board. As the media is reporting updates as if we are watching a game of checkers unfold, what is really taking place is a game of chess. That's the art of the deal. We must be patient and see how things play out. Israel must continue acting as independently as possible to win this war and beyond, even after the war, as President Trump ultimately wants, as I have also been talking about. Trump is not dumping Israel. He might be doing things that are good for America and not so good for Israel, but he is not dumping Israel. So I'm not worried. This is the U.S. president who publicly stated full support for Israel to give hell on Gaza. He didn't change his mind about that. He introduced the Gaza immigration policy because he knows that's the only solution, and he didn't forget about that either. And he gave Israel all the weapons and more that were held up by the Biden administration since January 2024, the beginning of the war. Trump is not dumping us because we are needed for a safer America as well. Victory will come in Gaza and on all 7 fronts of this war. Israel will be stronger, bigger, and more independent as a regional power. Regardless, everyone, never lose sight of the ultimate guiding light, God above. So always work on strengthening your faith. Great things are happening and coming, even with all this confusion and even anger. We still have plenty of ups and downs ahead of us, but ultimately the Jewish state of Israel will be bigger and stronger than ever before since biblical times as we continue our trajectory to fulfilling our purpose as the indigenous Jewish nation back as sovereign in our ancestral homeland in order to bring morality and prosperity to those who want to live in peace with us, around us, and to all of humanity. That is our purpose, spreading morality as the Jewish people living in our ancestral homeland. Never forget that. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you for joining another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our beautiful, biblical, eternal, indivisible capital, Jerusalem, since King David's time. If you are not yet a subscriber to our daily, belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect daily Pulse of Israel videos, what are you waiting for? Click to subscribe on pulseofisrael.com, and we are a donor-based operation. We need your support. We have so much work to do in helping inspire people with a true belief-based analysis of everything going on and empower them. We need your help to reach more people and grow. We need large donations and small donations. So every once in a while, just click on the donate button on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everyone, and thanks for watching.